There's a reason that you don't often hear many people talking about any Fantastic Four games. They've been pretty rough. There's some standalone games, some spin-off games, and of course the movie tie-in games. But here's the thing. You might be wondering how you can actually play all of these in the modern era on PC. So therefore, I decided to explore every single Fantastic Four game. Not every game that they appeared in though, I'd be here all day if I did that. From a very, very strange PS1 game, to the movie tie-in games which have a tremendous amount of versions varying across platforms, some of which have entirely different gameplay from one another, and then some spin-off titles that are actually quite interesting. Join me as we explore the games and answer the question, what is the best way to play the Fantastic Four games? The first game that we're going to be covering is the awfully strange Fantastic Four for the PlayStation 1. This is an exclusive PS1 title released in 1997. This game right out of the gate caught me way off guard with this intro.
Mr. Fantastic!
This one's super straightforward because I can't really recommend any other version, being that this is the only one that it's released for, but I can give you some emulation tweaks to make the overall experience better if you want to try it out. You can run this on RetroArch, I'm sure that'll be fine, but I ran it on DuckStation and it's incredibly easy to set up for people that have never used emulation before, and I had no issues from what I played personally. I recommend that you do the usual turning up the internal resolution to your monitor's native resolution, and then turning on PGXP to get rid of the wobble. This game also works with the depth buffer enabled, so I recommend doing that to further help the stability. Besides that, these are the other settings that I'd recommend. Scaling set to nearest neighbor is one that is going to make your overall image sharper, and also widescreen rendering switch to on, and then forcing 16:9 does actually work for this title as it has no 16:9 patch in the patches menu. Of course, the 2D elements like the main menu and the UI might not look correct, but the backgrounds here are fully 3D unlike other PS1 games, so the widescreen actually works pretty well. Still though, I just chose to play in 4:3, so that's the gameplay that you're going to see in the background. Now, I gotta mention the music for this game because damn, they did not have to go this hard. The game is fun but also extremely bare bones and basic. It's just your average beat 'em up side scroller that suffers from pretty boring enemy design. The reviews for this game were also brutal. IGN gave this a 1. I don't think it's a 1, maybe a 3 or a 4 is better suited. It's definitely a playable experience, just totally lacking in anything exciting. Also, the loading screen is this fun little racing minigame. It might actually be more fun than the actual game itself. I forgot loading was done a few times during playing this because I was just playing this racing game. After this lackluster release, Marvel's first family lay dormant in terms of gaming for quite a few years. That was until 2005, where Fox released The Fantastic Four, a film pretty much across the board disliked by critics, but it's always been a film that I can't help but like in many ways. Whether it's the rose-tinted glasses of that sweet, cheesy mid-2000s superhero charm, or the fact that for me, besides Doom, the casting was pretty good, especially Michael Chiklis as the Thing and Chris Evans as the Human Torch.
It's clobbering time!
It's catchy, right?
We aren't here to talk about the movie though, for this is the era of those awful movie tie-in games that were purely just made to cash in on the success of Hollywood movies. In this case though, it isn't totally terrible. It plays a bit like a stripped back Ultimate Alliance game, and this was way before that game came out, so it kinda paved the way for it. Also, the cast of the film reprised their roles here to do voice acting. It is that very stereotypical movie tie-in sort of phone-in kind of voice acting, where no one here is really trying to give a great performance.
Are you turning invisible too?
Not exactly. You'll see.
Look out!
This is one of the more favourably reviewed Fantastic Four games, giving it a mixed score rather than terrible, and calling it a passable action game. This game was released on the PlayStation 2, GameCube, Xbox, and was also ported to the PC by Beanox. Starting with the PS2 version of this game, this is the one that I grew up playing, and thankfully it works great for the most part. The only graphical bug that I could spot was in the main menus. Some of the text looks a bit funny, but besides that, it's pretty much flawless. Also on the default settings with just the internal resolution increased and anisotropic filtering set to 16 times, it ran and looked pretty great. I ran this with the Vulkan renderer and I'd recommend everyone who has access to that use it. I also set the blending accuracy to the maximum with no slowdowns during my time with it. If you have to resort to OpenGL, then I wouldn't put the blending accuracy to maximum. You'll probably have to set it to basic or maybe medium and high if you can get away with that. Now the visuals here are very PS2, if that makes sense. The textures are quite low res and overall the game just kind of has a little bit of blur to it, even at high resolutions. It also has a widescreen and 60 FPS patch that you can enable within the game properties menu. This 60 FPS patch broke the intro cutscene, it just totally froze, and the only way to get past that point in the cutscene was to turn off the 60 FPS patch entirely. The good news though is that I turned this back on after this cutscene and never ran into an issue like it, so for the most part this 60 FPS patch does work, but it's worth pointing out that you may need to turn it off and on at certain points. Now if you do run this, I'd recommend overclocking the emulator to at least 180%. And with all this set, you can see here that the 60 FPS is extremely solid. There may be a few drops here and there in random spots when you use massive effects, but for the most part it's absolutely flawless. Now let's move over to looking at the game on GameCube running on the Dolphin Emulator. Let's first compare them visually. You can see that a lot of the effects are missing or broken, like here the light on Ben's helmet is completely missing in the GameCube version. Also the Human Torch looks more like diamond than fiery like he's supposed to in PCSX2. Performance though, Dolphin actually runs natively at 60 FPS, so if you're not going to use the patch or the patch just doesn't work, then Dolphin technically performs faster. Loading times were also way faster on Dolphin. Sadly though, whilst it has native 60 FPS support, there's no patch or gecko code for widescreen. You can however enable the widescreen hack feature inside Dolphin, which worked, and it actually looked pretty good during gameplay. It broke menus and UI of course, but honestly, I can live with it. For the other settings, I always change Uber shaders to hybrid and then with compiling ticked as well to reduce any stuttering that you might have whilst the shaders are being compiled. And then for enhancements, I set up the usual anisotropic filtering, and also I set anti-aliasing to 8 times SSAA for this emulator, as I like the smoothness on the edges that it gives. It's not too harsh. Also internal resolution, I match what I had on PCSX2. All in all, besides natively supporting 60 FPS, the GameCube version is a bit of a letdown, but now let's turn our attention to the Xbox version. This version is very similar to other original Xbox versions of games back then. The Xbox always seemingly had the version of the game that was the most sharp and performed the highest, but here the emulator really does let it down. Vulkan on this emulator has major slowdowns, and I would not recommend ever using it. Also, widescreen, not at all. You can stretch or scale it, which can look good, but it's just not as perfect as anything that PCSX2 and Dolphin can provide you. There is most doubtably some hex editor hack that I could do in order to maybe get widescreen here, but it's honestly not really worth the hassle as there's so many other things wrong with playing on this emulator. Performance is really solid, but not better than any of the other versions. It always makes me a bit sad when I try games on this emulator because it's so close to being the best version almost every time, and it's just a shame that there's just not much more of a focus on getting this emulator to a more developed state. There is one way to get this version of the game running with widescreen, and that's actually the PC version, because I'm 99% sure that Beanox, the guys that ported the game, ported the Xbox version, as they look identical. The issue is though, is that the PC version is a serious health risk. This could take 5 to 10 years off your life if you'd let it. It's a doomed port and is an absolute nightmare to get running on modern hardware, and it took me personally 3 hours of tinkering in order to get the recommendations that I'm going to share with you here. And once it is all fixed up though, it's pretty fantastic.
Say that again?
Here's the thing though. You can't get this game legally. You can either get it from a second-hand store for pretty cheap, but then you'd need a CD reader, or you can sell the 7Cs. I can't share any links of course, but here, come a little bit closer. Search Abandonware Fantastic 4. Now when you get a copy, the installation process is really easy. Windows can mount the ISO file automatically, and then you just double click the setup.exe and you install it just like any other program. I'd recommend when asked to install it somewhere else that is not the default. If you install it to the default, then it's going to go in a Windows protected folder and it's only going to cause issues. So, like I said, 3 hours, not even joking, 3 full hours of my life that I will never get back, troubleshooting and finding out what worked, and most importantly about this port, what did not work. But that means I can just give you the answers. This game has a really annoying DRM protection so that it will check the disk every time that you load up the game. So if you don't have the disk in your PC, it just won't load at all. So the no CD patch is going to get rid of that, but more importantly also just make it way easier to run the game. Again, this is something that I can't really link, but fantastic for Windows no CD English old games. That's what you want to search in Google. Inside the archive of this patch will be a game.exe file, and that basically is going to be replacing the one with the exact same name where you installed the game, and then inside a folder called game. Whilst you're here, you might as well right click this exe, go to properties, and make sure that it runs as admin. Also, if you run into any further issues, setting compatibility mode to Windows XP is a good thing to do. If you open the game using the shortcut that it gives you at the end of the setup, it's going to open the launcher every time, and that's quite cumbersome. This launcher is a nightmare, and it will not respond randomly when you try to play the game. So what I did was create a shortcut of this game.exe, and run the game using that instead. I do, however, recommend opening the launcher at least once to set your resolution, enable widescreen, and also you can enable anti-aliasing here. The controller support for this game is pretty abysmal as well. When you launch the game, it seems like everything is working, but only half of my inputs were actually mapped. So I had to go into the launcher and map everything one by one manually. Not too much of a problem, you know, if the launcher actually functioned like a launcher. Honestly, you left click, nothing happens. You wait about 5 seconds, something finally happens, and then you press the wrong button and it binds the total wrong thing. What I had to do was basically very, very patiently left click on the thing that I wanted to bind, wait at least, no joke, 15 seconds, and then spam the button on my controller for another about 15 seconds before it recognizes what I'm pressing. Overall, binding every key took about 20 minutes in of itself. Also, games that have this stupid coloured nonsense icons in these old PC ports drive me absolutely crazy on this channel. I get that at the time the studios probably didn't want to pay the license fees to get the real buttons, but these just make no sense and just make it so hard to bind the controls. Like, hold on, yeah, let me press the star plus fist button on my controller. Oh wait, I'm not using a freaking Fisher-Price controller. Sorry, I have no clue what you're talking about. Anyway, back on track. Don't open the game just yet. Set a 60 FPS cap any way that you want to. The easiest way to do this that I find is through the graphics control panel, be it NVIDIA or AMD, or use RetroArch. I chose to use my NVIDIA control panel, that's just what I personally use. I would use something like Special K maybe, but Special K does not work at all with this game. If you don't lock the game to 60 FPS, then you're gonna break the game, so it's mandatory. If you want to go above 60, then you're going to have to resort to using something like lossless scaling. If you're unsure what lossless scaling is, use the card in the top right or the link in the description to go to my specific video all about lossless scaling. It will tell you how it works and also, more importantly, how to set it all up. Whilst we are in the control panel, forcing anisotropic filtering to 16 times is vital as the game does not have any filtering by default. Overriding the anti-aliasing using your graphics card control panel could lend to better visuals, but it's not necessary. Now we can actually play the game. Oh wait, right, borderless windowed. Yeah, no, not at all. I tried 3 ways to force this game into windowed mode with no luck at all. Special K doesn't load, DG Voodoo doesn't affect it, neither does DXVK, and something like D3D9 Wrapper, which has an INI file to force windowed, nope, nothing. The full screen here is actually quite optimized and fast. It's not as intrusive as some of the older games, so it's not really that much of a big deal. Also, one thing about this PC game that I will note that is really good would be the loading screens. See, in a lot of these other games, it's basically replicating the console loading screens, but here you're just getting how fast your PC is almost on the loading screen. So basically loading screens are almost instant since this is a very old game. You're getting the smoothness and also the sharp visuals from the Xbox version, because I'm pretty sure it's ported from that, and you're also getting widescreen. It's all well and good though, me getting it set up and now it looks and runs great, but honestly, I would still just rather play it on Dolphin or PCSX2. It's just easier and way more reliable. I honestly feel like this game is going to just fall apart randomly, maybe even stop loading entirely or just crash at random points, and I wouldn't be surprised if there are serious game-breaking bugs later on that I missed. For final verdicts, I'm going to go ahead and give the best overall to PCSX2. I think without a doubt you're going to have a good experience with this one, whereas Dolphin has its issues, Xemu definitely has its issues, and PC is just a nightmare to set up. You're going to have to deal with longer loading times if you go with this version, and also like I've mentioned, the 60 FPS patch is hit or miss sometimes. For the most part, I think the pros way outweigh the cons here. You wouldn't be totally out of your mind to go play the Dolphin version, to be honest. If you want to do that, it's way better than going with the Xbox or the PC. Unless you're extremely determined to tweak the PC version, because it is good after it's, actually functioning. But for the most part, I would consider Xemu and PC the weak links in all of this. Now you might be thinking that after this game, we're going to go look at the sequels movie tie-in games. But instead, we're actually going to look at a spin-off title, because later that year, Taurus Games produced a Game Boy Advance game that purely focused on the Human Torch. Before we explore that though, I need to talk about today's sponsor, Instant Gaming. If you're anything like me and you've got an unhealthy backlog of games that you want to play, Instant Gaming is a great way to actually afford it all. They are one of few places that are not a marketplace key site, and therefore all of the keys here are legit and sourced by Instant Gaming themselves. You're never going to get a dodgy game key that doesn't work, and I know this from personal experience because I've been using them for years without any issue at all. So if you're planning on picking up any games, both new and old, check out the link in the description, and if you make any purchases using that link, you will directly support the channel, and you also might save a few quid on games. Now, back to the video. This is still based on the 2005 film, and it plays like the usual side-scroller beat-em-up that you'd see on this platform. I really liked my short time with this one. It's clear that it's not trying to be anything that it's not, and it's just a fun little game. There is seriously little to nothing online about it though. I'm lucky that I even caught it, as some Fantastic Four games lists don't even mention it. And to be honest, that's a shame, because whilst there's a possibility that this was just made to capitalize on the popularity of the console and the movie at the time, it's a lot better than, say, something like the PS1 Fantastic Four game in my opinion. It's also really straightforward in terms of playing it today on the PC. Just use the MGBA core within RetroArch. I'd recommend also under settings, then driver, setting video to Vulkan if your machine supports it. The thing with these 2D pixel games is that if you're on a resolution like 1920 by 1080, the pixels are not going to be perfect. You can turn on integer scaling, but this will make the image smaller, so my recommendation is using a pixel correction shader, something like Pixelate at the bare minimum. If you're on a resolution that's pixel perfect though, something like 2560 by 1440, then you don't really have to worry about this. Whilst you're in game, if you open up the RetroArch's quick menu using F1 and then go to core options, there's a color correction setting within the video page. This set to Game Boy Advance will better match the colors of the original hardware's display, but I personally prefer without it. I just thought it was good to, point it out for those that would prefer a more authentic experience. Speaking of authenticity, if you want to use some shaders, then I recommend LCD Grid V2. You don't want to be using any CRT shaders here, as the Game Boy Advance was an LCD console. There's also an option for this shader inside the console borders folder that adds a Game Boy Advance overlay. It's a gimmick, but still pretty cool. There is also LCD 3X or 1X if you prefer something more subtle. Lastly, Retro Crisis has a GBA shader, very CRT-like if you're into that. Besides these kind of shaders, there is also some things that can smooth out the pixels, but I really hate this personally. If you're someone that actually likes and uses these edge smoothing shaders, please let me know in the comments. There's nothing against you guys, I just have yet to meet someone that actually uses and enjoys them. With all that said though, I just play on default settings without any shaders. I like the vibrant, sharp pixels for this game. I just wanted to show you what's possible anyway to just help you tune your experience to your liking. It's time now to move on to the second movie tie-in game, The Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. A game that has so many ports, some of which are completely different games to one another. So let's explore every single one of them. The PS2 version, again running on PCSX2, I ran this with the exact same settings that I used for the first game and had a pretty much flawless experience. The thing that is different for this game over the first game is that it runs natively at 60 FPS with no patch needed. There's also a widescreen patch for the game. This one kinda plays similar to the first game, but it is more Ultimate Alliance sort of top-down camera fighter rather than the tighter, more lower-down camera of the first game. The only issue that I found with playing this version was the fact that the portraits do not line up during the dialogue box sections. No settings or manual hardware fixes sorted it out. It even persists without the widescreen patch or even running in software mode. You're just gonna have to deal with it. And deal with it you might, because the Wii version of this game also shares the same exact issue. And the reason I'm moving on to the Wii version is because this specific version of the game, this gameplay, was only on the PS2 and the Wii, so these are your only two options. And to be honest, it looks like you're probably just going to have to go with the PCSX2 version regardless, because it doesn't really make sense at all to go with the Wii version. Unless you have, original hardware, or you have the Wiimote and Nunchuck that you can connect to your PC, setting up this kind of controller with, say, an Xbox or PlayStation controller is a nightmare, to put it lightly. It can be done, it's just janky. You have to shake the controllers, for example, during this game, and you basically have to set a keybind to that, which just feels awkward during gameplay. I wasn't going into this as a defeatist though, I was really up for making this work, but even after I got the controller working nicely, the game just also didn't run that well, and it was locked to 30 FPS, so just go with the PS2 version here if you want to play this version of the game. Both these games though had pretty bad reviews. The funniest one that I found was GameSpot, who gave it a 2.6, saying that the only good thing about this game was that both the case and the game can be recycled. Anyway, there are PS3 and Xbox 360 versions of the game, and these are completely different for the most part. They share the same sort of beat-em-up fighter style gameplay, but in basically every way they're completely different games. 2K Games, who published this one, and also Activision at this time, were really snidey about stuff like this. These have identical cover arts, and I actually vividly remember as a kid coming home excitedly to play Web of Shadows on the PS2, ready to swing around the city and fight Venom, only to be met with this.
Another evening in paradise. Who am I kidding?
And it's kind of the same case here. It's not as drastic as going from a side-scroller to an actual open-world game. These are very similar in regards to gameplay, but things like, for example, the PS2 version doesn't have the original cast voicing them, whereas the PS3 does. It's kind of obvious that more attention was focused on the PS3 and Xbox 360 versions, as they were the latest hardware at the time. And of course the visuals are night and day. So let's start with the Xbox 360 version, which, okay, never mind. XENIA Canary is nowhere near RPCS 3 levels of polish, and so this was kind of expected. I was hoping it was just the cutscenes, so I skipped through to the gameplay and then it crashed. So maybe let's just move on to PS3. This game running on RPCS 3 could not be any different from XENIA. What reality are we in that a PS3 emulator runs games this well compared to an Xbox 360? I mean, the Xbox 360 is in a lot of ways just a PC, whereas the PS3 was this alien architecture technology that now we can just, emulate on PC. I mean, it's actually incredible. It does have some visual bugs here and there. Switching these two settings to on is what the wiki recommended, and that did fix it, but I still did encounter some flickering when using certain abilities, so it's not perfect. If you're watching this at a later date, just check the wiki to make sure that you're totally up to date with any fixes or settings that you need to change. Upscaling to your native resolution is also just as easy as the other emulators. I recommend using AMD's sharpening filter for the resampling option, as that just makes the overall image cleaner. Now, I can't really judge these games based off the small time that I spent with them. I didn't play them from start to finish for this video. But man, this game is boring. Honestly, every single room looks the exact same, and it's all just so generic. The level design just screams uninteresting, whereas I felt like the PS2 game actually had a bit more charm to it. To make things even more confusing, this was also released on the Nintendo DS, and if you thought it was going to look like any of the other versions, then you're going to be disappointed. This is a 2D side-scroller, a really bad one at that. easily the worst of these games version. It just is really drab and boring. You can run this really easily with MelonDS. I'd recommend enabling the JIT recompiler in the CPU settings, upping the resolution in the video settings, and besides that, there isn't really much you can do. Not that you'd really want to. I mean, hopefully I've made the one guy out there that wants to play this version really happy, but anyway, let's get to the verdict on this game. This one is really simple. If you want to play that PS2 version of the game, then go with PS2. Technically, it also has a Wii version, but I just don't advise you play that on PC. Now for the other version, I have no doubt that if you played this on the original hardware, the 360 version would probably come out on top because it was a lot simpler to develop for. But we're talking about playing this on PC, and the Xbox 360 version basically broke its leg before it even started the race, so PS3 just automatically wins this. Lastly, the DS version is there if you want to play it. Just play it through MelonDS. Not gonna lie, as I came to ending this script, I couldn't help but feel kind of sad. For the most part, all we've covered in this video is just movie tie-in slop. There's actually no proper good fleshed out Fantastic Four game. Of course, if we covered games that also just included Fantastic Four, we would have covered some amazing games, but stuff like Ultimate Alliance, that needs its own video, as there are so many different versions and details to them that I want to dedicate an entire video to it. If you want to see me do a separate video on Ultimate Alliance, then do let me know in the comments, and also subscribe so you don't miss when and if I upload that. So now that we've stretched our way around the ports, even the ones that are invisible to the mainstream, we've blazed past the terrible ones and witnessed XENIA absolutely clobber the 360 version. I think it's now safe to say that, yeah, gaming has not been all too kind to the Fantastic Four. And that's a shame for the Fantastic Four and also superheroes as a whole. We've been getting cancellation after cancellation for superhero games, and it feels like most of the market today is focused more on mobile and live service than actual quality story-driven superhero games. So here's to hoping that maybe Wolverine is absolutely incredible and opens the space to more great Marvel games. For now though, to get our superhero fix, we gotta go back and experience the classics. And my god, is there so many superhero games to play from this era. And hopefully in this video I helped you specifically go back and play some of the Fantastic Four games. Before I end this video, I need to say two things. Firstly, a big thanks to the amazing people over on Patreon that support me monthly. This is the best way to support the channel and create this kind of niche content like this, so if you want to help out, you can join them from just £1 a month. In return, you're going to get exclusive behind the scenes content and a role in the community Discord. If you're into Marvel games, then I have good news, because I have so many episodes of Best Way to Play that feature Spider-Man games. Also, if you want to learn all the tips and tricks and techniques to renew older games yourself, then watch this video on the right where I go over all of the stuff to make it happen. See you over there.